I have been retired last year, but I have worked on the issue of quality of life my whole scientific life. It's like 40 years or something like that. And I had this privilege to see how this issue of quality of life is very wide and how it is also changing. And if you would let me describe a little bit what it is like, quality of life, and what is it like to be a scientific subject, what scientists do with that, then I would have to start with this complexity of the issue. If you yourself think about your life and about quality of your life, how would you describe it? How would you evaluate it? How would you measure it? You can see that it is very wide. And you can start numbering and housing and money and husband and health and environment and education and trust and people. And you perhaps you would just, at some point have to decide and say, no, it's enough. And it's like this in science as well, because there are new elements of quality of life that are being brought under our observation, and it's being measured and it's being analyzed, and sometimes policies can do something about that. But basically quality of life started at the end of Second World War, and the origin is in the idea of basic human needs. All people have some needs. And the responsibility of society and of states has become increasingly to be aware of these needs and try to help people satisfy these needs. But perhaps it's important to differentiate between what is basic needs and what are other needs. So one of the earliest, very important observation in social scientists and the effort to define what is quality of life is Scandinavian approach. They had first they had the level of living, where they tried to focus on material things and to measure those things, and then other elements were also brought to that. And there were three groups of needs that were somehow most important. One is having, loving, and being. And having is about resources that a person has and can use to satisfy whatever need. And then with material needs like food and housing and money and all kinds of material things. And then there are those needs that go to this group of loving, and it has to do with other people, with relations. How am I connected to other people? How do they recognize me? How am I involved with them? How do they somehow help me build and maintain my sort of identity? Who am I? It also has emotions which are so very important, like trust and love and all that. So that's the second part. And then the third group is about being. It's about self-fulfillment. Who am I? How can I, let's say, fulfill my ideas about a human being, a good society? What can I contribute to the society? What is my role in this world? So this is the third group. And as you can see, you can divide all of these into smaller indicators. So to go on, perhaps let's say that later on they somehow defined the domains of quality of life. It's like employment, health, family, leisure time, material resources, political participation, environment, community, and then it went on and on and on. And today there is a very good systematic research going on the European Quality of Life Survey, where they have also included other more complex indicators like happiness and trust and empowerment and very many other things. But just to go back, if I can, a little bit, what was important is that when there is this scientific research of quality of life, it has to do with quality of life of individuals. How is their life, what kind of quality they have in these different domains. But then it's also important to differentiate between, let's say, satisfactors with like resources that people have on their command. Let's say what kind of housing it is, what kind of access to health it is, how much money they have, how many relatives they have, what kind of job do they have, and so it's something that is outside of them and could be to some degree objectively identified. How much money do I have? How many times a week do I eat, let's say, meat? How many times, like, can I heat my housing in winter or not? And so this is objectively, but then there is the other side, which has to do with how I feel about that. Satisfaction, how do I feel satisfied with that? And it's surprising to realize that these things do not go together completely as we could expect. Because there are many people that, let's say, have bad housing, inadequate housing, but they're satisfied with that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who live in extraordinary good conditions, but they are not satisfied with that. So it also, satisfaction is also, you know, the element of quality of life, very important element. And then there is this question, how can society make use of these data? What to do with that? How can policies respond to that? Is it the issue of policies? Because it's not only the individual responsibility and issue. So these quality of life studies then provide very important information, but it's up to societies and polities to decide what to do with them. Like one of the earliest very important benefit of these research, empirical research, was to point out the differences, inequalities in the population, because there are differences. And some groups are deprived, some groups are very well off. And then there are so differences between, let's say, genders, between old and young people, between people that live in cities and in rural areas, between immigrants and others. So the deprived groups could be identified and become targets for policies. And then there is another important issue, and that would be enough for that. And these indicators provide society with the view about how a certain society is doing when compared to other societies. And there is huge difference in cultural terms, in climatic terms, and also in terms of GDP. And so it's very interesting to see how is, let's say, Slovenia with certain GDP doing in comparison to countries of similar GDP, let's say in the field of healthcare or in the field of life satisfaction, or any indicators that we could choose and could be interesting for us. So this is quality of life, and it's an endless story in a way. Once you start, observing and measuring and discussing it, it's endless story. But then it's important to find some priorities. What is important for society? What is important for research? What is important for NGOs that work in this field? For longevity, it's the same as the whole life of people. Housing, how to respond to difference between what a person has in housing and what he or she would like to have. And there are always two basic models how to respond to that. One is to stay here in this apartment, in this housing, and try to adapt it. And the other model is to move and to find another apartment, another housing unit. So when it's about aging and how to respond to aging in housing, well, it's becoming increasingly important that people can remain in their housing unit and adapt it to the changing needs. And it's, of course, some obstacles, architecture obstacles, slippery floor, inadequate furniture, and also, let's say, stairs, how accessible is apartment. And these things need to be adapted so falls can be prevented. It's very important. But then there is another very important aspect of housing, and it's the surrounding of housing. It's the outdoor spaces, recreational possibilities, greenery, beauty of greenery, the air quality of greenery, and also possibility to meet other people, to join, to talk to them, perhaps to build this sort of community, to do something, and perhaps to meet different generations. So at this point, it is very important how our buildings and neighborhoods are built, and how can people, when they age and their needs and their desires and their priorities change, how they can still be uh, be part of this community and live happily in this different situation. So this is one which is very popular, but of course there are problems because sometimes people remain in their housing units which are large. Let's say in Slovenia we have many self-built housing which were built, let's say 40, 50, 60 years ago, and now when older people remain alone because children move and perhaps even the partner dies, it's a problem how to remain in this old, large housing, which also needs to be taken care of and needs to be keep warm, and so in winter. So it is a way. It is problematic sometimes, yes, and people, they say that it's very important if a person realizes that his or her housing should be problematic, should not be very good in older age, that they should do something about that. And they have to do it early enough, when people have enough energy and enough resources, either to do something with housing or to move away. And it's also a problem because in Slovenia, well, it has to do with culture. It has to do also with mobility. In Slovenia, for instance, we have quite low mobility, which means that like every year, about 2% of population move to and go to another housing, change the address. Like in Netherlands, it's like 10% of people. Like in US, it's like close to 20% of people. So they take it as a normal thing to move. So in some societies like ours, it's not taken really as a normal thing. And it's difficult for people to move to other options like, you know, supported housing and so. In States, well, there are huge cultural differences. In States, it's quite often that people move when they are older, and they move to these, let's say, retirement communities with absolutely different infrastructure, and they change these networks, social networks, and you know, access to health and everything is there, and they take it as normal. Like in Slovenia, it's not taken really as normal, although some older people in Slovenia tend to move to the seaside because it's warmer there, more green spaces, outside spaces in winter. But it's important, yeah, to decide early enough in your lifetime how to best use housing options to support your life, your happy aging life.
It's good to be prepared.
Yes, yes, yes. But it's not it's not easy. It's not simple, and it's very important to be able to rely to other people, to talk to other people, and perhaps also to be open to new options. Like it's not really a necessity that you remain alone in your housing and suffer because you're so alone and isolated. There are so many options to move, like co-housing, to move with other people, and so. And I think that NGOs could be very, very helpful in that, to initiate talks, to initiate a gathering of people to think about these options. And so, like for me personally, I would love to move to a cooperative housing where, let's say, like 30 or so of other people would live, so we could have some cultural life together. We could meet at evenings and socialize. And so because my generation, hippie generation, you know, we all thought, wow, we would be together, we would never move to our individual units and live by by ourselves. But now it's absolutely, yeah, it's happening. It's here we are, yeah. And so my individual, let's say, dream is, who knows what will happen. I'm a bit I'm a bit perhaps too old to make such decisions, but perhaps I will make it. We'll see about that. Well, social networks. It's such an important element of quality of life. Absolutely. But perhaps we could say in two ways. It's in two ways. First is direct. It means contacts. It means people with which I can exchange my mind, discuss things, share things, let's say, lend some money, lend books, go together and, let's say, have some activities, people to which I can provide comfort when they're down, and they can provide comfort with me and give me advice and all sorts of things. And also this sort of emotional attachment. We can share happiness and we can share sadness. And it's extremely, extremely important that people have this. And here it is perhaps important to highlight the differences between people. Some people are extroverts and they need more, and some people are introverts and they need less of this. So it's important to have the opportunity not to be exposed too much to networks, not to be exposed more that a person would decide. And these networks are consisting of various elements, like there are family members, and then there are, let's say, community, local community, and there are other. And with aging, the structure of our social networks is changing. Like young people have different social networks than older people have. Also because, like, when you are employed, the colleagues are a very important part of your social networks. And wherever you are involved, you enter social relations and get networks. But then with aging, when you step out of employment, then perhaps your colleagues are not so important anymore. And then your family members, perhaps they shrink. There is less family members because a lot of family members die. may die, may go away, of the same age or of adult people. And also, they say with aging societies, what is happening in family structure, and it's important that if we compare today's societies with, let's say, 50 years ago, family structures are, they say, are becoming more vertical, which means that like 50 years ago, each member had more of horizontal family members, like siblings, more siblings, brothers, sisters, more cousins, more aunts, and so. But today, they are less. But the family structure is reaching through more generations. Now it's not so uncommon that four generations are in the family network, 4 generations. So it has to do with how a person can adapt to these changes. Yeah, and then there is this another very important feature of social network. It is that whatever resources we do have, social networks multiply these resources. You know, I can, if I do not have much money, you know, but I have people in my social network, I can lend some money, or they can lend some money to me. If I miss something, they can do it to me. If I do not have idea, you know, some what to do, they can provide me some idea, some initiative, some information, some activities, and so. So it's very important that we do have some networks, but they multiply. So it means that then also if the people that have smaller networks, more closed networks, they are also able to provide less support from those than others. So inequalities, in a way, are important here. But to conclude this thing, I think it's extremely important that people with aging are aware about their individual changes that happen to their networks, but also to these structure social changes that are happening, that family somehow is losing importance. Family ties are losing importance, and other opportunities for other networks are increasing, and that it's important to be aware of that and to take the opportunities to engage in these new networks, in civil society, in activities, in, let's say, specific old age activities for learning, for exercise, for opportunities to provide support, to provide care to other people, and perhaps also to get some care from other people. There are new important opportunities, particularly in civil society. So it's so significant that people, you know, do not get stuck with their diminishing family networks and are aware that there are new opportunities, and to seek those opportunities, to try to remain open and to seek, because you can meet new people through various activities that you can join and meet new people, get new members of your network when you age. Well, look, I think that we can't, or I can't emphasize enough how good it is that we got rid of COVID. Because when we got it, it seemed so difficult and so unknown and so threatening, and so many various interpretations were going on, and many people were really desperate, and so many stress accumulated, and there was so much criticism about medicine and pharmaceutical companies, and about what they do, and all that was partly all right, criticism, but at the end, do not forget that somehow all these efforts helped us so we could overcome this horrible threat. Okay, so when we were making our research on COVID and how people responded and how they survived and how they tried to cope with all these different problems that COVID brought, then we decided to focus on housing that was on people that lived in multi-apartment buildings in Ljubljana. One reason for that was that it was quite easy accessible to target people in multi-apartment buildings, because we need to have these interviews which was email survey. And then what was so specific about it, and really we were interested about that, was that multi-apartment buildings are so specific because there many people meet, contacts are much more frequent, people use common spaces, and which means that the risk of getting infection was higher, could be higher in those buildings. And on the other side, we also knew that perhaps these networks, the neighborhood neighbors, were not only the source of potential risk, but they were also a source of potential support to people to cope with all these problems that isolation brought with COVID. So we observed that, and well, we found that people responded quite differently, and there were accumulation of stress and fears, and really also violence. There were more violence within families, within households. But then on the other side, we also found that there were some new practices, new activities that people somehow invented or started to cope with COVID, to cope with inaccessibility, because when there was this lockdown, people should not go out. It was problematic to have access to shops, to medical care, to everything, to recreational facilities. So we discovered how people, some people, not all, of course, but significant amount of people developed supportive activities. So they brought things to other people. They brought people sometimes where they need it. They provided, let's say, uh, support in emotional terms. And even what happened was that some new social forms of sociability, of gathering, developed. Like people were at 5 o'clock, they appeared on the balconies, and then some places they sang, some places they had protests. We had protests against very harsh government responses towards COVID. So all kinds of things were happening. Um, some people found it very positive that during COVID isolation they should work at home, and they found new strategies how to cope with that, and also how to take care about children, and so it was different, and I could not say what would be, let's say, the final summary of our experience of COVID, because I think it differed across locations, cultures, states, and so. But what we found in multi-apartment buildings was that somehow trust in neighbors, remained quite high. So, it is important part of human quality of life that you have trust, that you can trust to some people around you. So it remained, and I thought it was quite valuable, and I hope, definitely hope, that I will not survive to see another problem, another case of COVID, or another such a disease. But in that case, I think one of our conclusion was that the level of multi-apartment building is an important level. It's an important structure where isolation and problems with COVID or another infectious disease could be dealt with. It's like how could you say? It's like in a way, it's like a fortress where things can happen, where things can change, where people can help each other. I see, I see. Yes, longevity and inequality. I think that it's fine and it is necessary to question inequality in longevity, and that society takes measures. It's very important, but still I think it will remain an issue, and there needs to be some inequality, because it's always a human response to situations, and it's various. It varies. Uh, Inequality in longevity could be tackled at the local level, which is extremely important, that people are provided different encouragement and various sorts of infrastructure and opportunity to have a good life even when they age in their local community, and it is up to local community. It has to do with recreational spaces, accessibility of services. It has to do with accessibility of healthcare, all kinds of things, and it has to be done on the local level. And it also can be done on the national or regional level with regional and state polities in all these domains of health, education, recreation, psychology, in all these domains. In networking, support of aging people. But what do they need to meet their needs? And then there is also a lot that can be done by individual person. So to be aware of possibilities, to cope with problems that come, to be open to new possibilities, to be aware of new possibilities, to seek new answers, and to be aware of this, that aging is specific. It's a specific time in your life, and it has also a lot to do with culture, and a lot to do with identity, because I think that when people get to older age, there is also this identity problem. How is my identity related to my old age? Is it bad? Is it just the decay? Is it just waiting that I'm going to die? Because it should be like that. It's always been like that. Old age is decay. It's, everything gets worse and worse and worse. It's normal. And let me tell you, my pain, it becomes here, and then it moves here, and then and then there are networks, that exchange news in how pain is moving from here to that and then that. So I'm ironical about that, but it is a problem actually. Yes, when people in age focus on what is bad, what is worse, what is gone. And on the other side, of course, old age can be seen also as a specific time or a specific cycle, a specific time in my life when I can enjoy the fruit of my life. It's given to me as a gift, because not many generations before were able to enjoy this gift, that I am relatively well off, and I have time to do what I really enjoy doing, and also to fulfill my role in society, to help other people, to care for other people, and let other people care for me. And so we have this caring society which is so important that we nurture it. It's a, a quality of society, really, that we can do. And it's, again, I should emphasize how it's important to be active and to take opportunity to engage in all these activities that are available. But then, at the end, it all comes also to the point how individuals feel and see it, how people remain open to new opportunities, to new situations. And this is a unique, really, this is a unique time in history, because changes are so fast and there are so many changes going on. And so this quality of a person to remain open, to remain flexible, is so important. And it's quite individual. And I think that here is really where the inequalities will remain and can't be eradicated totally. But of course, society, especially NGOs, civil society, and different policies and media can encourage people, can inform people that there are different options, new possibilities, social innovation in the field of aging are so numerous, and people are not aware of that. Let's say in Slovenia, just one social innovation, we call it Prostofer. It's about the possibility that at the local level, they provide space and telephone and provide secretary, and then people can report that they need a drive, that they need transport. And other people as volunteers can report that they are happy to provide support, to provide transportation to somebody else. So they can meet and they can do that, and they can care for each other. And it's such a quality. And it's a completely new thing. So I would stop here and just emphasize that the old age and the longevity also has benefits for society, because at this age, when people are not employed anymore and are relatively healthy and do have some energy and do have some experience and do have some patience and do have some time, you know, they have the opportunity to afford to give to society so much, you know, and this is very valuable. Well, it's a tough question. I don't know, but I think that um, in a way, people are most satisfied, happy, when they have a goal and work for it and are getting closer to it. But once they reach that goal, perhaps they are not satisfied anymore. And I have problems with understanding this question. I can't refer actually to it, that people seek harmony and they are not satisfied. Well, you know, people, human beings, we are rational and emotional beings. And rationally, we need to have goals to make sense to our activity. And emotionally, we need to be satisfied. We need satisfaction that come from when you actually attain what you want, you reach your goal. This makes you satisfied. The awareness that you succeeded. So it somehow confirms. It somehow tells that you were doing right.
Who are you?
Who am I? Nobody ever asked me that. Myself, I didn't ask myself either. Okay, so who am I? Well, I am sociologist, which means that a lot of my life was about society, observing society, what's happening in society. And I'm also a researcher, which means that I'm curious about what is happening, and I'm looking around, and I'm excited when I see something new, something unexplained. And so this was my professional career, but it has to do with my personality, I guess, also. But then at the moment, I'm retired. I'm very happily retired because in a way, I suffered when I was employed in employment, and now I'm really enjoying this freedom of not having to work for 8 hours or so. And I'm really excited to see what various opportunities life and society brings, including my grandchildren and their life, my child, my husband, my neighbors, my friends, my plants. I have a garden, and I really enjoy to see how plants are growing. Many new trees come by themselves, and then I let them grow, and sometimes one grew very, very high. So they say that a person needs to have a child in their life, to grow a tree, and to write a book. And I did that. So I'm happy. I'm very grateful. Who am I? I'm very grateful that I have come to the world, that I have managed to survive a couple of times that could not survive. I'm giving this opportunity, and I am also I also have some new ideas and new desires what to learn. I'm learning Italian, I'm learning Russian. I learned how to drive bicycle, but not without hand. I would like to do that, but I think I will not be able to do that. I started painting, and at the moment I feel that I am quite well off, happy, but I'm not doing something very important for the society. So I hope I would find something to engage more into social life and to do something good for society. I hope I get such opportunity and idea as well.